Hello, everybody. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're waiting for a few more people to enter, and we'll be starting shortly. Hello, everybody. 2 more minutes, and we'll be starting. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Susanna Ecclestone. I'm the Executive Director at the British Argentine Chamber of Commerce, and we are very proud to present today our members and colleagues at Alfaro Abogados and Hallgarten and Company. Our Hallgarten and Company panelist is having some technical issues, so we hope we can have him soon on board with us. But thank you very much for joining us today. We'll be discussing mining opportunities in Argentina, and we have a large number of people registered. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Carlos Alfaro, who's going to be our moderator today. And Carlos is an independent advisor and non-executive member to the board of multinational corporations, compliance, transparency, and regulatory related issues, advisor to multinational European and American corporations in cross-border transactions, international private transactions, foreign debt, mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, strategic alliances, international construction projects, project finance, mining and oil and gas, founding partner of Alfaro Abogados, members of the BACC, an advisory firm with associated offices in New York, Beijing, and the main office in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Carlos' experience, he has participated in the deregulation of the mining industry during the government of Carlos Menem, working with the Secretary of Mining in the promotion of the program in Canada and the United States. He represented CRA, Australia, and then acquired by Rio Tinto, Parsons and Whitemore in a joint venture with YMSD, Yacimientos Mineros de Aguas de Dionisio, Ganfeld Equity Financing of Lithium Americas, and advise private investors in mining ventures. Thank you very much, Carlos, for being with us today. And Carlos, you will be introducing the rest of our panelists. We invite everybody to post your questions in the chat box and the Q&A box, and then we'll go over those at the end of the event. But we also welcome everybody to just, let us know and contact the speakers directly at the end of the event. So without further ado, and we hope that Chris can join in at some point, but if not, we'll just carry on. I'll leave you all. Thank you very much, and I'll see you later at the end of the presentations.
Susanna, thank you very much. Congratulations to you and the British Argentine Chamber of Commerce. You have been doing a great job as executive director of the chamber, and you know that we have followed the activities of the chamber closely for many years. My introduction words will be more focused on which is the mining for Argentina. What significance has mining for Argentina? It is of great importance for Argentina because one of the main challenges of any developing country like Argentina is their capacity to generate revenues in hard currency. And And why? Because that is what is going to secure sustainable growth. And at the same time, if there is a foreign debt to be paid, like it happened in the case of Argentina, it will generate the hard currency necessary to repay the debt and satisfy the concern of creditors with respect to the ability of Argentina to meet the deadlines. So it is crucial for the negotiation with the IMF, it is crucial for the negotiation with bondholders, it is crucial for financing of private exploration of mine and exploitation of mines in Argentina. So mining is going to play a key role in the years to come in Argentina, together with, Argentina is very rich in natural resources, everybody knows that. Export of grains, go up to 60% of the revenues in hard currency of Argentina. Then we have the shale exploration, which is another benefit that nature has given to Argentina. We have the third largest reserve of shale in the country, and pluses or minuses, maybe Argentina will be able to export, become a net exporter of oil and gas within the next 10 years. And that will add an additional source of hard revenue. And then you have mining. Mining for the year 2030, let's forget about 220 and maybe 221, because there are extraordinary years, or more precise will be out of the ordinary years in the world, not only for Argentina, for the rest of the world. But if things move ahead in the right direction and the economy in the world restarts, the need for mining ores will be important. And Argentina has a lot to offer. Argentina has copper, has gold, has silver, and has potassium, borates, and lithium. Lithium is perhaps the latest newcomer in Argentina. By latest, I mean 5 years, 10 years ago. It was not. It was in process of being explored and developed. But Argentina has the third largest reserves of lithium. Of course, it is behind Australia, Chile, and Bolivia. But the advantage, for example, with respect to Australia is that Argentina is brine, in Australia is hard rock, and being hard rock implies more costs for extraction. An advantage over Chile and Bolivia is that in Argentina you have the right to get title to the properties, which is not the case in Chile and Bolivia, which is reserved for the state. Argentine authorities, they estimate that by the year 2030, the revenues in exports from mining will be $10 billion, which is a good amount. Of course, export of traditional grains will be higher, but you have to sum up. And summing up is a very important leg of the table in order to repay the debt. And if the program that Argentina is negotiating with the IMF is close and it is a sustainable program, and that is very important. People cannot neglect one of the goals of any government, not only the present government of Argentina, of any government in the world, is to pay the debts, get the financing, but doing that in a way that you are able to continue with the developing of the society and the growth of the country and provide full employment to the population. That's what a government is all about. So without further ado, let me introduce the speakers today. And I'm going to do it in the order in which each of them are going to speak. The first one will be Ignacio Celorrio. Ignacio is a very good friend of many years. He has more than 20 years of experience with international clients. He's not only a lawyer, a practicing lawyer in Argentina, but he has practiced law for large law firms in Canada and in the United States. He has been very active at the different mining organizations, the Rocky Mountain Mineral Law Foundation, also the mining committees at the International Bar Association. And furthermore, he has been at the board of the Argentine Chamber of Entrepreneurs, mining entrepreneurs, for almost 10 years, and he has actively participated in each one of the committees. He's currently the vice president of the Australian Argentine Industry and Commercial Chamber, and he has been teaching at the university. He has given conferences in academia, international and Argentine events. So I'm very proud of having Ignacio in charge of the mining department of the law firm. The second speaker would be Christopher Ecclestone. He's a principal and mining strategy at Hallgarten and Company. He's based in London. Prior to founding Hallgarten and Company in 2003, he was the head of research at an economic think tank in the United States, which he had joined in 2001. And before moving to the US, he was the founder and head of research at the Argentine equity research firm, Buenos Aires Trust Company, from 1991 until 2001. He graduated in 1981 from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. And last will be Federico Palavecino, whom I have the pleasure of knowing him also from the beginning of the law firm, although he was not working at the law firm at that time. He joined Alfaro Abogados in 2019. He has more than 25 years of legal experience in the South American mining industry. He was 15 years regional director at Barrick Gold, one of the leading mining companies in Argentina and in the world. He has an MBA and has authored or co-authored several books on tax and mining issues. He's an expert in tax, and he's going to speak about tax impact in mining services and development and the exploration. So with no more words, Ignacio, the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Carlos, for the introduction. I'm going to share a presentation that we are going to chat with Federico in, let me put this. There it goes, sorry. And I'm just going, I've seen a while, thank you for the introduction, Carlos, and thank you for the Chamber for the opportunity to have a few minutes to chat with you about the situation of mining in Argentina and the potentialities it has in the years to come. I've seen during the introductions the name of many friends as participants and many people that are pretty knowledgeable about the mining industry in Argentina for many years. So regardless that the presentation might be a little, at a first approach on the situation of Argentina regarding mining, please, in the moment of Q&As, if there is any specific questions or an issue that wants to be discussed more in detail, I'll be happy to. The idea of this presentation is basically to have an overview of the main issues that are coming to Argentina in the next years to come. As you know, Argentina has had and has been a target for development of mining projects for some time now. It's been 30 years of the changes in the mining laws that kick off the big mining, the major mining investments into the country. But as many of you will agree, still is a country in potential regarding to mining itself. There is a lot of challenges that are not different from the ones that the industry faces all around the world. But at the same time, it has its challenges to consolidate a base in, the industry as integral part of the economic sector of Argentina itself. It is quite important in many of the provinces, for example, in the north, in San Juan, in Santa Cruz, among many others, but still has, the challenge to become a consolidated sector nationwide. But this implies at the same time, and this is actually fairly good, that when you see the potential of Argentina now that the super cycle has, after the years that the super cycle had been stopped, and now it seems like the prices are recovering finally after so many years, that still Argentina has quite a bit to offer in regards to potential projects, and at the same time, a more or less known picture about how the, what the investor may look and see in regards to the country. At the same time, and as I know that is kind of important at the chamber itself, from a service provider's perspective, you can have a quick understanding of the potential and the potential investments and new projects that the country will offer not very far. So in first, as Carlos was mentioning, lithium has been a big attractive, a big magnet of investment in Argentina for different reasons. The interesting part of lithium as an, as an investing-driven mineral into Argentina has been that it has been consistent regardless the general economic situation of the country. This was basically because of the quality and of the lithium projects in Argentina, the characteristics of the other countries in the lithium triangle regarding to tenements, the characteristics of the type of quality and type of minerals that you can extract from our competitors on hard rock lithium. But this is an issue that, and I've seen quite involved in this mineral lately, Argentina has certain challenge to consolidate these projects as fairly soon as possible, because lithium has not been a significant mineral within the world until the last decades. Even though Argentina has a mine since the 90s operating, the demand of lithium, it's expected to increase. The forecast of the demands of lithium of quality enough to be in cathodes to go to batteries is quite high. And therefore, this implies that many other countries that have never been inclined to develop or explore their lithium assets are looking at this with more attention. As you can see that there are lithium projects coming very, very slowly, but importantly in Brazil, Peru, and Mexico as well. In the other most base metal minerals, which Argentina has traditionally potential, like gold, copper, and silver, as you can see, there is a significant amount of development projects that can go forward very soon. Copper has been a little the darling in the last years. We all know that copper projects takes quite a bit to develop, and it implies a significant investments. But projects like Taca Taca, the new Mara in Catamarca, and Jose Maria in San Juan adds to the traditional copper project from the 90s that were not developed in Pachón and the Calingasta areas of San Juan. So if you see, the north has, even though has projects of gold and silver as well, copper and silver as well, for example, Taca Taca in Salta, the concentration of potential lithium investments in Jujuy, Salta, and Catamarca is quite high. And at the same time, the potential of copper investments, both particularly in San Juan, also in Salta, but also in Catamarca and La Rioja, has a certain prospectivity there if the loss goes forward, and the province can join into allowing the investment moving forward. The potential in that area can be very high. And as you see, the mining, as many of you know, is widespread around Argentina in very interesting ways. If you go to the south, there has been a significant increase of exploration in gold, the traditionally more efficient, less capital intensive gold and silver projects of the Deseado Massif, which besides that, we have a lot of struggles still to develop the ones in Chubut. Santa Cruz have been attracting quite a bit of investment and have had some good results in explorations as well. So there is the move for new exploration in Argentina can impact significantly in getting new projects. Obviously, we all know that this takes time, but there is some slightly better infrastructure, considering that now there are significant amount of mines that have been going forward from the 1990s. Also, they are more experienced in the closure of mines and the potential to expand those projects as well in order to take advantage of the infrastructure, as is happening in Agua Rica with the infrastructure of La Lumbrera. And this ranks Argentina in a very interesting position, besides the economic difficulties that traditionally the country has in regards to mining investments in the next years. Okay. Then this is just a little more deep picture on what I was just indicating. As you can see, there is a huge amount of lithium projects. This really goes from very different stages. There is only 2 mines operating. The 2 has interesting enough expansion plans. 2 in constructions, one that is half made by now, the other one that is still struggling a little bit in order is smaller. But then there are quite a bit of mines that either they have feasibility studies done or they are waiting for finance. So if the price is there, the level of advancement of lithium, which is a particularly difficult type of mineral to produce, it's the quality that is needed on lithium carbonate that is demanded by the market right now. It's much more a chemical industry than a mining traditional industry. So this is something that it can be quite interesting of seeing how the next projects develop. In copper, as seen, Alumbrera is basically closing, but we have big projects around that are advanced, and they are looking either to consolidate their position in order to finance. And funny enough, on copper, even more than lithium, they had quite a bit of pressure from the provincial governments to move forward. This is particularly interesting in San Juan in regards to some of the projects there, in which the government has a lot of interest in them to be on the pipeline to replace the most standard and more mature gold mines that are in the province right now. Gold, as you can see, is where we have more mines, 8 active mines around Argentina. Those mines are a bit widespread around the country, but many of them not that big. They are concentrated in the south in Santa Cruz, plus the ones that are in San Juan. But the potential of exploration in this type of the mines will be quite interesting, because many of the projects and much of the exploration is concentrated in Santa Cruz, in the Macizo of the Deseado, which can get a cluster of projects that maybe they're not as big, even though Cerro Negro is quite big and important, and a class world project in itself. But also you can see that there's going to be quite a bit of projects moving forward that they had gotten a lot of, that had raised a lot of capital for exploration in the last year, particularly in the Canadian market. And finally, on silver, the silver has been a little lagging because of the most interesting project of silver of Argentina is in a province that has a lot of difficulties to accept mining itself, as is Chubut. As we all know, or sorry, as many of us know, the ironic part of the silver project Navidad is that it's in an area that is quite pro-mining, but because of traditional conflicts with the population in the borders of the province of Chubut, the whole province has struggled quite a bit in order to develop that asset itself. Nevertheless, there has been more silver exploration. There are projects that go from the north to the south in regards of silver. So the potential for this mineral is quite present in Argentina as well. This is a quick overview. As we know, and this is the reason I was separating by provinces, as has been traditionally in the explanations about mining in Argentina. Argentina, as a federal country, has a different type of jurisdictions connected to certain types of regulations regarding mining. In short, the provinces has quite a bit of decision in regards to allowing the exploration or not, the development of mining projects or not. This is regardless that our mining code is national, it's issued by the Federal Congress, and the application of the mining code only is provincial. The truth is the mining permits relies, basically the most important permit, the environmental permit, relies on the provinces. So this has been used traditionally as the instrument under which the provinces decide most of their mining policies itself. As the mining permit and the environmental permit has to be updated every 2 years and goes directly on the different stages of exploration and development that the project has. This is in the end the key permit that has allowed most of the provinces to decide and be the deciding matter regarding mining issues in their countries. Nevertheless, and I think that Federico will go in that point in much detail, tax incentives for mining are mostly federal, and they're quite interesting since the 90s when they were enacted, even though not always were respected. There is a drive also by the federal government to, to regulate and have maybe not in the scope that those benefits were envisioned in the 90s, but yes, to have a more standard and stable benefits that can apply to the mining projects as well. A quick overview of the mining companies operating in Argentina. You can see that many of the top companies in the world have active assets in Argentina. Barrick, Ganfeng, Shandong, both Chinese companies, Barrick Canadian, Newmont Canadian, and Anglo-Gold South Africa. Argentina has had a variety of foreign investment into the country, which still, as said before, hasn't consolidated the industry as much as it can. It has quite a bit of experience and have gone down the road for 30 years in regards to put mines into production since the issue of the federal incentive laws to mines in the 1990s. Finally, just a detail of the specific projects that are moving just forward. Lindero, the first gold mine in Salta, an important and significant assets to the province, since Salta has always been ranking high in the index, investment desirability index of the Fraser one, particularly of Argentina, but it had struggled to have a production itself. Lindero by Fortuna Silver started production this year, and also the province has interesting assets in lithium and copper as well that can put into production, that are more easy to finance and can put into production in the next years. In lithium particularly, as I said before, Caucharí-Olaroz lithium project of Ganfeng, one of the biggest producers in the world, plus Lithium Americas, a company that had grown up through this asset particularly, but has assets in the US as well. It's over 50% production, and this is a 40,000 ton per year battery grade quality lithium project, which actually will duplicate the output of Argentina itself. But also in lithium, Livent has announced the expansion of their projects, and they have signed agreements into, with automotives to move forward on that they will need this product. And Galaxy and Orocobre announced their merger, which asked the other producing lithium mine in Argentina, the Sales de Jujuy project in the Caucharí Salar, plus Galaxy traditionally holds one of the most interesting lithium assets that have not been developed, which is the Sal de Vida project adjacent to Livent Salar del Hombre Muerto. And finally, as said, we can expect quite a bit of news, particularly as they have had success in the latest exploration of the José María project of Lundin in San Juan, very close to La Rioja, in the north, which is a project that is close to Chile, in an area that has a lot of prospectivity from a geological perspective. And this is one of the most attractive new copper projects that Argentina has to offer. plus the traditional ones, as I said before, in Calingasta, and the ones of Agua Rica in Catamarca. Finally, just to give you an idea, and Carlos was mentioning this issue a little bit, Argentina has a very simple title and permit structure. It doesn't fully offset, but really should offset much of the concerns that connects with the traditional economic framework problems of Argentina itself for investment. But the way that title and tenure is maintained is simple. The process for permits, if it's well conducted, is quite much more efficient than other places in the world. There is social issues that arise, and the companies, as anywhere in the world, has to have a close eye and understanding of the stakeholders close to their project. This is key for the development of any projects in the world, but particularly in Argentina, due to this issue that, as I said before, the industry still has challenges to consolidate in the country itself. But when this is correctly done, and the relationship with the province and the stakeholders in the nearby project is good, the structure to keep title, keep it on the foreign shareholders company, have tenure of the tenements until the end of until the closing of the mine, and control the permits connected, both not only for environmental permits, but those related to water and the ones related to industrial and construction permits itself, are fairly simple to manage in comparison to other jurisdictions. So this has been a quick overview. I think I'm more or less on time. But I'll be happy to attend any questions later that you may have, and Federico will continue on the presentation later on regarding the specific tax benefits to mining itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ignacio. Very complete. I remember coming back from the PDAC meeting in Toronto 2 years ago, and we met a very important law firm here in New York. And you made a presentation that was very complete, and they were impressed with that. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
A couple of things. There are no restrictions concerning foreign investments, foreign ownership of companies in Argentina engaged in exploration of and extraction of mineral resources. That is very important for everybody to know. There are no specific restrictions either, or limitations on processing of extracting mineral resources. So that's, aside from the taxation, two key issues that merit to be highlighted. So now I think it's for Christopher. Chris, you can take over the presentation at this moment.
Yes, I will be sharing the presentation. Give me 1 second. Yes, Chris.
Is it not centered there? It needs to be a bit smaller. Okay, thanks. Anyone would think, looking at Argentina, that it has had long hiatuses in mining, but in fact, Argentina has been a consistent mining jurisdiction since the 1990s. Prior to that, there was a long period where there was very little to no private foreign mining in Argentina between the 1940s and the 1990s. But since the 1990s, despite a number of different governments of different political colors and directions, Argentina has been a miner and has become a major miner. At some moments, it was the largest or second largest producer of gold in Latin America. And this is because Argentina actually is a good place to do mining. Now, it's interesting to think that Argentina has a lot of detractors out there. You will meet people in the mining space who say, oh no, I'm never going to Argentina. But in fact, when surveys have been done of international miners who are actually operating in Argentina, and so know what they're talking about, those surveys have shown that while these operators will say there's a problem with this, a problem with that, generally they find particularly some provinces, are as good, if not better, than some of the most renowned jurisdictions in the world. And a good way of looking at this is to look at the Fraser Institute survey. Now, this is the main survey that's looked at internationally for mining jurisdictions. And in the latest version here, which is measured on the basis of not asking miners in general what they think of Argentina, but asking actually those foreign miners that are involved in Argentina what their experience has been and how they find the country. And we can see from the latest survey, which was 2020, that Argentina has been rising in the ranks of jurisdictions in which to operate. Now, there are other issues over and above, what happens at the provincial level. There may be exchange controls or import controls on certain items. But when looking at the actual jurisdictions in the provincial level on their willingness to approve projects, their receptiveness to the projects, and the legal framework in which people have to operate, we find a totally different story to the general prejudice that is out there about what Argentina is actually like on the mining front. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, here we have some rankings in 2020 of various jurisdictions by their attractiveness. And interestingly, you can see the United States there, Europe, Canada, Australia, and there is Argentina, well ahead of these other jurisdictions here, and including better than Latin American jurisdictions in general. And we can see also that it's an improving situation because their rating in 2020 was quite a bit higher than it was in 2019. Next slide. Okay, here the Fraser Institute has an investability factor in their survey. And we can see here some not unsurprising results. We see the Catamarca, Rio Negro, surprisingly, Salta, San Juan, Santa Cruz, they're all regarded, and Jujuy, all regarded as good places to do business. They're either encouraging investment or does not deter investment. That means they don't put stones in the road. When you add the first column and the second column together, if you get a score that's over 50%, you're getting a good result there. And as we can see from the would not invest columns, we see Chubut, which has had a long-term problem with shooting itself in the foot. Mendoza, which has made problems with the phosphate mine. And La Rioja, which has alternated over the years between being pro-mining and anti-mining and couldn't care less about mining. So we can see, though, that a bunch of Argentine provinces and prime mining provinces are regarded by Western investors and Western investors in the mining sector as being very attractive. And the score for Salta is really quite stunning when you add the encourages investment to the does not deter column. It's a really fantastic result, but it's pretty good for all of the others except for provinces like Chubut. Next slide, please. Okay, here we have a global ranking of the administration, interpretation, and enforcement of existing regulations, where blue is encouragement and pink is does not deter investment. So that's the first two columns on the other page. Here we have Salta actually coming ahead of Western Australia, Nevada, Saskatchewan, and hot areas like Arizona and Finland. This is quite stunning. Idaho actually came out as the top ranked jurisdiction of all in 2020 for various other measures as well. But Salta actually comes out ahead of Idaho in this aspect of administration, interpretation, enforcement of regulation. And regulations are basically the thing that is most key to mining investment. If you go into a jurisdiction and you find that they don't change the rules on you, that is an attractive jurisdiction in which to work. And SALTA has made sure that it does not move the goalposts. And as we can see, as a great surprise to me, Rio Negro down there next to Botswana, because Botswana is regarded as the best jurisdiction in Africa. And Rio Negro, of course, then comes ahead of a whole lot of other countries. I haven't put the whole survey here, but these are the top 12 countries. And to have 2 Argentine provinces in there and only 1 Canadian province is actually quite embarrassing for Canada. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm just repeating here a few of the facts that were given by our previous speaker. The Menem administration reformed the mining code, passing from what was a pretty stagnant and dead hand at the federal government to the provinces. As we've seen, the provinces have done different things with this new power that they've been given in the 90s. Some of them have used it to promote mining and to get industry and jobs going again, as we've seen in Catamarca, Salta, Jujuy. Others have said, we're not interested in it. We don't care that you've given us this power. We don't want to have certain types of mining. And that's why Chubut is now on pretty much every international investor's, do not go list. But that has not stopped what has been really quite a strong surge of investment into gold mining and precious metals mining in the south, and now is moving towards a lot of bigger copper projects where these projects have not been in the freezer for a couple of decades. And I'm thinking here about Agua Rica and Taca Taca because of situation in Argentina. Many of these mines have been in the freezer because the copper price was too low. These are big multi-billion-dollar investments. And as long as copper was below $3 per pound, and now it's over $4.70 per pound, the dynamic has totally changed. And so these large projects, frequently in isolated locations, as is Taca Taca, are now becoming much more viable. And we will see now that the focus is going to be shifting from what are relatively small gold mines and silver mines into what are going to be some of the biggest copper mines in the world. Here we've got down the bottom, a few reiterations of some problems there. And, the AFIP have been vigilant on the issue of transfer pricing. And this is a real concern. Transfer pricing is something that Argentina has to watch out for. And when it looks at the performance of various foreign miners, it does have to be aware that with the best will in the world, some of them are going to try and transfer profits out of the country, particularly if they're engaged in activities where they are mining in Argentina and then they are taking a concentrate out of the country to another country, to a third location where they will be processing it. It is very easy in that context to turn around to tax inspectors in Argentina who are not geologists and say that the ore content, the value content of a certain load of concentrate is X, when it actually, in fact, may be quite a lot higher. And what is being transferred out of Argentina in that context is profits. So Argentina needs to get more sophisticated in its taxing of concentrates so that it can properly assess these risks. But also, the solution to this is that more of the end processing takes place in Argentina. Now, a good example here is Australia, where over recent years, the lithium mining in Australia resulted in a lot of product leaving the country as a concentrate and being sent to China and other places to be processed into the end lithium. The trend over the last 2 years has been that the processing plants are now being built in Australia so that the value added is landing in Australia. Argentina is now hot for lithium, and Argentina is in a position where potentially it can go to some of the developers of these lithium brine salars and say, you are not going to be taking a lithium concentrate out of the country and sending it to China, Korea, Japan, the US, Europe, whatever. We want to have that upgraded to a carbonate or to a hydroxide within Argentina. We do not just want to be sending a raw material. We want to be keeping that value added. So that is an important factor. Next slide, please. We've heard a bit in this presentation, and everyone knows that Argentina has been big in gold and silver for the last 20, 25 years. Lithium has been a rising star. Lithium's, in fact, Argentina has been a lithium producer for a lot longer than it's been a gold producer. There were foreign companies operating in Argentina in the lithium space that many in Argentina did not realize what they were doing, but they were actually producing. And I'm thinking here of FMC, which is now Livent, have been operating for a long time at the Salar de Hombre Muerto. But now we're seeing that in the last 10 years, lithium has really taken off. But Argentina has other potential minerals as well. Uranium and vanadium exist in Argentina, and there are 2 Canadian companies pursuing uranium in Patagonia. Argentina is an absolute natural to develop a uranium industry. It used to have a uranium industry that was actually run by the state as part of the Argentine, corporate approach towards the nuclear industry. Argentina is one of the world's top nuclear scientific nations. And yet, perversely, it is actually importing its uranium from places like Kazakhstan and elsewhere, when it should be producing that product for itself from Argentina. And I would be advocating that the government actually look seriously at the development of an Argentine uranium mining industry by potentially doing offtakes from the big power stations in Argentina, the nuclear Tulcha, etc., and doing deals with, to offtake uranium from these potential producers in Patagonia, and also looking to revive some of the old uranium mines that used to exist back in the days of state-controlled mining. Other things we should look at here are tin, which Argentina has exploited in the past, rare earths. Manganese has been mined in Santiago del Estero, of all places, and antimony, which has been mined in Catamarca, particularly it was mined during the Second World War. These are minerals that people are not looking at. Argentina has a future in these and other minerals like cobalt, but no one is really looking at that area at the moment. Next slide, please. Okay, I won't spend a lot of time on this this issue because the previous speaker went through the big projects, but there are a number of world-scale projects in Argentina that have been sitting on the back burner, so to speak, awaiting a turn in sentiments towards their prices, and a confluence between higher prices and a sympathetic regime within the provinces where they're located. It's no point trying to develop a mine in Mendoza, no matter what the copper price is, if the government in Mendoza is not receptive to seeing a copper mine being developed. So we really need to have a confluence between the two. But some of these other projects, like Agua Rica in Catamarca, has a favorable provincial government and now has great prices for the underlying minerals. In the lithium space, it's just a feeding frenzy. Argentina has, there've been an oscillation over the last 10 years from brines towards hard rock lithium, and now the pendulum has swung back to salares. And Argentina is now the leading nation for potential salares. Chile has dropped the ball here. As was mentioned by the previous speaker, in Chile, the assets in that space are reserved for friends and family of the government or for government organizations. And foreign companies have found it very difficult to maneuver within Chile. Argentina is a much, much better place to do lithium than Chile is, believe it or not. And Argentina is going to be rapidly overtaking Chile over the next 10 years in this space because the Chileans have dropped the ball. Bolivia is a totally different issue. Bolivia's Salar de Uyuni has chemical issues because it has large amounts of magnesium within the brines, which have muddied the waters there, literally. And so Argentina has really the potential here to pull ahead of both Chile and Bolivia. Next slide, please. Okay, one area that's intriguing, and I worked all of the 1990s in the Bolsa in Buenos Aires when I lived in Argentina, and that was the potential of the Bolsa. The Bolsa has not had a mining company listed for decades and decades, since the 1960s. And these investors have left that market, and we've seen all these developments happen in Argentina, and yet we've seen no mining companies coming to the Bolsa. I believe that there is a potential for lithium and gold companies to be listed on the Bolsa in Argentina. And like Peru, where the Lima Venture Exchange attracts enormous numbers of Peruvian domestic middle-class investors into mining stocks, Argentina could do this as well. I've had talks with the president of the Bolsa in Buenos Aires. They are very receptive. The government really needs to come up with, the Comisión Nacional de Valores and the government need to come up with an idea, a plan to get more capital raisings for mining projects using the essentially trapped capital that the middle class in Argentina have in banks, having the colchón, which is the mattress, and mobilizing that money and getting it into listed stocks on the Bolsa that are mining oriented. Next slide, please. And a bit of futurology here. This is where we predict what might happen. I don't think there's any risk of it passing back to federal oversight because the provinces that are being successful are doing really well with that. You know, the government at the moment may be pretty generous, but it has limited resources. And so the provinces, some provinces have realized they really need to raise their own money. And the way that they can raise tax money and royalty money is by encouraging mining within their province. Mendoza may not feel that, Chubut may not feel that, but other provinces that are less resourced with other industries, like Catamarca or La Rioja, really need to look towards mining as being a big source of potential tax revenues. I think there's potential for Argentina to grab value added in processing, particularly with lithium, but I also think that that could be the case in copper. We haven't seen much in the way of green threats in Argentina. We could say that the Chubut incident is actually linked to a green scare of many decades ago, but most other places in Argentina, greens are not a big problem. I hope that we'll see more mining listings, and I think that Argentina is starting to get a reputation out there as being a better mining jurisdiction than Chile. And that has to be a surprising outcome because Chile for a long time was the golden girl of Latin American mining, but Chile has really dropped the ball. The problems it made with Pascualama for Barrick and problems in other areas, its restrictions on the lithium are really quite ridiculous. And Argentina is in a position here to grab the initiative from Chile. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Federico,
coming. I will share screen with the presentation. I don't see.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the presentation?
Yep.
I do.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Well, I'm going to talk about 2 slides only, very quickly, considering the time. I understand we have to end at 10 a.m. So the first one is regarding the mining companies in itself. The second is was the service providers to mining companies, which I've been asked to also take a look at. The mining incentives regime comes from the 90s and has been considered one of the stepping stones on the growth of the mining sector in the modern mining sector in Argentina. One of the key or the most renowned elements that it has is the tax stability for 30 years for any company starting a mining venture in Argentina. This particular benefit has had its ups and downs. Currently is being applicable, I would say, quite fairly, despite that there has been a couple of hiccups with export duties and with the foreign exchange regime on how to apply it. But it wasn't dropped. It was reinterpreted, not as good as the sector would have liked, but it's still working there. Other very important element is the duty-free exemption for import of capital goods, which significantly improves the construction stage of the project and also the operation. There are many elements that the mining operation requires that Argentina does not produce. So this is significant in order to reduce costs. From the income tax perspective, I believe, in my experience at least, the most relevant issue has been the accelerated depreciation, which is an element that has been also provided to other sectors as it worked well. And Argentina, from the public accounting point of view, does not consider that as a cost, because what they are doing is just not collecting tax now because the company accelerated the depreciation, but they are going to collect the tax in the future. So as Argentina considers this particular incentive, it does not create a cost for the government. So they are not challenging that particular element in any of the projects, and that really improves the time value of money. The mining royalties, from time to time, we had a new chapter of this discussion between the companies and the provinces. Is the big revenue that the provinces get from the mining activity, at least direct revenue, because the big boon for the provinces is all the service providers to the mine operation, as well as the salaries paid to the people working there, which most of it is local. So more than 90% of the people working there and the salaries are local. So that really improves the economics of any place in which a mine sits. An issue that has been discussed along the years is the deduction of the environmental costs during production. As you know, remediation comes after operation, mostly. So you will be spending money at the end of the life of the mine when you don't have revenues against which to deduct those costs. So the trick here is to advance those deductions. Nowadays, you have 2 alternatives to do it: one on the specific mining regime and one on the general regime, as from an amendment to the general tax law in 2017. And well, that's specifically the landscape for mining companies. I understand that the key issue here is not only the mining companies get earnings from the mining activity, but the suppliers have a lot of businesses around a mining project. So a key issue here, Argentina not being a very experienced mining jurisdiction, is to provide services to those mines. And particularly, I am now focusing on foreign service providers. The key issue to understand the tax treatment for a foreign service provider first is whether you have or do not have presence in Argentina. If you do not have presence in Argentina or have presence for a very short time, less than 6 months, then whatever service you render to Argentina will be taxed when you get paid via withholding tax. If the service provider is a company domiciled in the UK, then the withholding tax will be 10%, far lower than the general 31.5% withholding tax. So that is a very good issue that Argentina has a double tax treaty with the UK. If the service is related to technical assistance, and this is basically engineering services, you, in order to benefit from that 10% withholding tax, you will need to register the contract in Argentina. That will create the issue of written contracts in Argentina signed by both parties are subject to stamp tax. So you will have a 1% tax on the full value of the contract upfront. That's a cost, but it will be far more than repaid when reduced the withholding at the end. An issue that has created problems from time to time is that you need a certificate of domicile. You, being the company rendering the service, you need to provide that certificate of domicile. Each time you provide one is good for 15 months. So a rule of thumb is get one each year that you are going to be operating in Argentina from abroad. If you are going to, well, that's if you are not in Argentina. If you are in Argentina more than 6 months, you will have a permanent establishment. That is the tax jargon for a branch in what would be a corporate law. If that is the case, you need to register and start filing your own tax returns. In that case, you are going to be treated as any other Argentinian company. Nowadays, with a corporate income tax of 25% plus a 13% tax on dividend, which when weighted average and blended is an effective 35% tax rate. So saying this simple is a 35% tax. This tax is going to be increased during this year due to I mean, justification being the pandemic and the need of the government to increase revenue. The to 25% if small companies, 30 for middle companies, and 35 for big companies. If you are just arriving to the company, you will qualify as a small company, but that may not last. There are deductions available for payments of services and interest abroad, and so you can get not a shell entity in Argentina, but a very small one, and then have a lot of work done abroad and channel through the local company as services that will be paid and deducted by the local company. Issue here is you need to be careful about getting the right documentation, the right substance for what you are paying abroad, and that ultimately boils down into a good transfer pricing analysis and strategy. Transfer pricing, as the prior presenter said, is a big issue in Argentina. Currently, government is focusing on services and interest, not as much in the value of concentrates, although there are a couple of not so known examples in which they are challenging that. I have seen a couple of other challenges back in 1 or 2 decades ago, and usually the governments do not win transfer pricing challenges, but you really need to be careful about documentation and substance there. Well, the other key issue, if you are in Argentina, is the current foreign exchange restrictions. So it wouldn't be wise to have a permanent establishment to channel every service through that permanent establishment. You will want to split contracts and have something that is done outside to be invoiced directly to the local company, and some other stuff that is being done locally to be invoiced by the local branch or permanent establishment. So by doing that, you will avoid a lot of trouble with the foreign exchange restrictions. But that is something to see in a case-by-case basis. And being 7 minutes past the timing, apologies for that. Try to rush up and summarize on this. I'm free for questions or Susana, I don't know how this follows.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Carlos, I mean, we'll go through the questions now.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any questions that the audience have asked?
Okay, we have 3 questions. Well, we have 2 questions. Yes, we will be sharing the presentations. That's one of the questions that we have, and we will be sharing the recordings. So thank you, everybody. We'll be doing that. So be, free to pass those along your networks, and we are happy to, share presentations and whatnot. Thank you, everybody. I think this has been very comprehensive, and we have run over the time. We have 2 questions here. Chinese companies have traditionally had problems with Argentina, with the syndicates, given Chinese propensity to bring in Chinese man camps of workers who do not adhere to local laws. Is this a problem in the Argentine mining industry? This is Marsha.
Yeah, Marsha Weiss. Long time we haven't seen each other. Marcia, no, what happened is that Argentina has not really allowed, and also the Chinese companies has not forced the import, between quotation marks, of Chinese workers as it happened in China. So primarily the Chinese employees that have come to Argentina were at managerial level. Even for the construction of the railways in Belgrano Norte, which was one of the first projects in which Chinese companies were involved, the government of Argentina never agreed on a policy of immigration for Chinese workers. Why is that? Because Argentina needs full employment. It's a country that favors workers. That's why we have very strict rules of protection of workers, and we have very strong unions that defend the workers' rights, and that's the nature of Argentina. In our personal experience, we are lawyers for many Chinese companies, Sinopec, that is in the oil and gas industry, and many others. We never have the request from the China to allow immigration of personnel, common personnel for any work in Argentina. So that has not been an issue in Argentina.
If I can add to that, particularly, I think that I agree with Carlos that the real question relates in which type of workers they want to bring to Argentina. The Argentinian general workers population is quite sophisticated and used to mining work itself. So as in any country in the world, you will need a specific reason to bring a foreign worker into Argentina. And that, typical, let's say, blue-collar mining work, it would be hard to fit the bill. But on the other hand, there hasn't been, and I've been also involved in a lot of these issues, particularly because lithium is such a characteristic type of industry. I've been quite involved in the bringing sophisticated or specified management, and that has never been particularly an issue. Even if, as some companies prefer, and this is typical of Asian companies, I agree, there has been a significant amount of people that were coming to Argentina for a specific time. But what the country obviously will not allow is, having a mass amount of workers just to do, work that the Argentinian workers can do. There hasn't been any real pressures in that way in the mining industry per se. And I will only add that, as in any country and any project nowadays in the world, mining projects need to have a very strong community involvement policies and stakeholder policy. So it's not only workers that are usually preferred from the area surrounding the mine, but also almost any serious project has a procurement development program from the towns and communities close to the project as well. And they do have a pressure, an obvious and normal pressure by the provincial government to enhance the amount of provincial suppliers into the mine. So that's, Federico was talking about, the benefits if you wanted to provide service and goods to a mine in Argentina. Sometimes it's good to have a local partner, particularly someone, if you're in the construction part, particularly, to have a local partner or, to join forces with to provide services, something quite common here.
Thank you, Ignacio. We have one more question and then we'll close the event because we have really run over the time. Argentina has expressed an interest in developing lithium-ion batteries. Is this a good idea? The underlying issue is adding value to lithium production. Would that be done just by improving chemical processes for producing carbonate hydroxide? Is that enough? This is Patricia.
I don't think so. I think the question, and yeah, I'll try to be short, even though the question is long to answer. In the lithium industry, as I said before, it's an industry in the making, and therefore it will see how geopolitics and pressures of each country works out. And traditionally, countries with natural resources had a pressure into having more sophisticated use of that advantage of having the mineral or the basic mineral itself. This is obvious in Bolivia, for example, and to put too much pressure on this thing to develop has basically had an effect that no serious investment has come to the country yet, regardless the potential resources that they have, even though the Ushumi Salar is difficult as, the chemistry is not that easy. In Argentina, the governments have been quite direct in saying that to them, mining comes and goes, expands to the moment that there is lithium carbonate produced in the mine. And then it's a question there of the type of quality that the mine can produce of that lithium carbonate. And they have been quite clear that they don't want the investment of EV mobility. And I've seen the bill and really doesn't have anything in it that will disrupt the potential that the country has as a premier producer of lithium carbonate of highest quality. Then if you can add hydroxide, or if you want to do different type of chemistry, fine, nobody will say no. But then it's not, I don't think that the push is so much into having hydroxide itself, but it's basically to have the highest quality possible of the producing lithium involved. I think that the real discussion will go there. Some companies would like to send a lower product, and probably the government will push for a high quality one. But then when it comes to the whole connection of steps from where you go from the brine, let's say, until the battery itself, it doesn't mean that the country also wants to enhance the EV capabilities, and the provinces wants to enhance the EV capability, but this is a step-and-step process that will involve forging activity as well, because to produce cathodes will take, is not an industry that is easy to compete, and the government, I think, has quite clear on that. So just to finish, I think that this pressure will happen as the industry evolves, but I think the Argentinian officials have quite clear that they want to be as part of the process as possible, but not to do the whole process itself to end up in the battery.
Carlos, any closing comments, and then we'll say goodbye to everybody. Again, thank you very much to all of you and to those attending today. And closing remarks from our moderator today, and I will be saying goodbye after that.
Okay, now thanks very much. Thanks very much for everybody attending. The message is that Argentina is open for business in mining. It has stability from the tax point of view. It has the goal of converting mining exploration exports in one of the main resources for revenues of Argentina, and that Argentina is a country that has been blessed by nature, because the natural resources that Argentina has are extraordinary.
Wonderful. We are looking forward to having a second event related to mining. So if you have any particular interest or topics that you think we should be talking about, don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll be happy to just, look for the talent in the chamber and within our network, and produce another event pretty soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day, and I hope to see you all soon, and perhaps ideally in person. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.